Welcome to another episode of On This Day on the Gruely Truth Sports Network. I'm your host for On This Day, Mike Goodpaster, and today we're going to talk about January the 16th, 1972. The Dallas Cowboys beat the Miami Dolphins 24-3 in Super Bowl VI to win their first ever championship. Now, the Dallas Cowboys were a team that for many epitomized the frustration of not getting it done in the big game. And they finally ridded themselves of all these stigmas and won the biggest game of all, January the 16th, 1972, on a chilly but sun-filled day at the old Sugar Bowl. It took 12 years since the team's inception in 1960 for the Cowboys to turn the trick. Of course, they had narrow losses in championship games in 66 and 67 to the Green Bay Packers. They had a close loss in the Super Bowl the year before this, Super Bowl V, when Jim O'Brien kicked a 32-yard field goal to lead Baltimore over Dallas 16-13. But this time, Dallas turned the trick and won the Super Bowl, the NFL championship, and everything that's holy in professional football. The biggest victory, when it was finally accomplished, did not turn out as difficult as some former battles that the Cowboys have both won and lost. Dallas simply followed a plan of perfection and polished off the AFC's young champions, the Miami Dolphins, 24-3, in what seemed like a slightly partisan Dolphins crowd, even though it was down at the old Sugar Bowl, and you got to figure there'd be a lot of Cowboy fans there. But this is a Miami team that had captured kind of the nation's interest, kind of like the underdog that came out of nowhere, even though they were in a championship game the year before that and lost to Baltimore. Now, sometimes sidelights can kind of sound a theme. And in the nearby French Quarter the night before this game, a Miami fan was seen to give a Dallas Cowboy fan the choke sign. The Cowboy fan stood up, took his cowboy hat off, punched the guy in the face, and knocked him out. Tom Landry's Cowboys seemed a lot like that on this day. Now, the Cowboys have always been accused back in the day when Landry was there of always being an unemotional team. And after sound victories over a great Minnesota Viking team, a really good San Francisco 49er team to even get to the Super Bowl, emotions flowed. And though perhaps the greatest picture of all was when you see All-Pro Bob Lilly, who would lived and died many times through it all, light up a victory cigar, backslapping, having fun with his teammates. Even Dwayne Thomas, who hadn't opened his mouth, even to his friends in 4 months it seemed, was talking again. But the game, maybe it was the Cowboys' experience at such games against Lombardi's Packers, or the Baltimore Colts, or the Cleveland Browns that eventually paid off against the Dolphin team, which reminded many of the young, exciting Cowboys teams of the mid-'60s who kept coming up short against the Green Bay Packers. Now, experience helped because it is something that is always there to relate back to. And still, this was also, without a doubt, the best of many fine Cowboys teams that the organization had ever fielded up until that point. Now, weak side inside linebacker Chuck Howley, the man who always plays so well in championship games, believes this is the start, or believed at the time that this was the start of a dynasty, one that was predicted for Dallas as far back as 1966. Howley finished his 13th season as the oldest Cowboy, and when asked if he was going to retire, he said, "Are you kidding? I'm starting to enjoy myself now." Now, the Cowboys won on the field because its offense controlled the ball. They reeled off 69 plays to Miami's 44. They moved the ball on the ground for more yards than any team in the Super Bowl has ever done and continued an almost unbelievable string of fine defensive efforts. The Cowboys' defense did not allow a touchdown in either the NFC title victory over San Francisco, and they shut down the Minnesota Vikings, both really good offenses. Now, Dwayne Thomas, who seemed more enthusiastic than he had in months, was running at his best. You had Walt Garrison, his usual self, the Cowboy running game, netted a Super Bowl record at the time of 252 yards, 5.3 yards per attempt. There was an excellent and young Dolphins defense in front of them that was just not able to cope with the Cowboys' running game. Now, the big factors of the game were expected to be which team could run the ball best, thus opening up passing avenues. And the individual matchup that kind of caught the nation here was Mel Renfro, the great Cowboys DB, against wide receiver Paul Warfield, who had dealt Dallas misery for many years while he was with the Cleveland Browns. Renfro got it on early, slapping down a number, slapped down a number of passes early to Warfield. And quarterback Bob Greasy finally moved things around and put Warfield against other Dallas secondary players. Quarterback Roger Staubach started slowly, throwing high and becoming confused against the Miami zone defense. Remember, this turns in, over the next couple of years, to be one of the greatest defenses in NFL history. But as the custom with Roger Staubach, he hung in there, he didn't get discouraged, and he finished completing 12 of 19 passes for 119 yards, more importantly, 2 touchdowns, and he suffered no interceptions as he edged out Dwayne Thomas for the game's MVP award. Now, I don't think Staubach should have been the MVP, but we'll talk about that later maybe. And, Staubach said after the game it was a tremendous team effort. And when Roger was told after the game that he was named the MVP of the game, he used 2 words, holy cow. Now, Miami had a chance until early in the second half, and perhaps even until the fourth period opened. Dallas led 10-3. They moved to second half kickoff back 71 yards in 8 plays to take a 2-touchdown lead. Thomas was at his best, dipping and darting 23 yards with a key gain behind blocks by guard John Nyland and Rayfield Wright to the Miami 22. Bob Hayes then came back against the flow on an end around, picked up an excellent block by guard Blaine Nye, and moved 17 yards to the Miami 5. 2 plays later, Staubach was supposed to roll out to the weak side from the 3. Now, the Dolphins weren't the defense that they expected. At least that's what it looked like to me when I watched the game the other day again. So it looked like Staubach audible to a pitch out to Thomas to the strong side. Strong safety Dick Anderson read the play, came charging into the Cowboys' backfield just after Thomas took the pitch, but Thomas feinted, allowing Anderson to go past him and scored standing up. This gave the Cowboys confidence they needed to go all the way, and basically Chuck Howley, the old great Cowboy, is the one that sealed the Dolphins' doom. Miami faced a 3rd and 4 at its own 49, just as the final period started. Greasy was attempting to hit running back Jim Kick on the right sideline. Both outside linebackers were in zone coverage on the play. And it looked to me from watching it that Howley was kind of faking like he was going to cut down the wide receivers. And instead, he just cut down Howard Twilley. And I guess Greasy didn't see him, but he jumped back up after knocking Twilley down. And there was the ball. Howley intercepted the ball, followed his blockers down the sideline, and would have gone all the way, except he fell down at the Miami 9-yard line. And as Howley said after the game in the locker room, he said, "Imagine, nobody touched me. I had blockers out in front of me, and I fell." Well, Howley jumped up when you watched the game and slammed the ball down in disgust and was swept off the field by his teammates, who appreciated more would have happened at the time than Chuck did. 3 plays later, Roger Staubach hit Mike Ditka with a 70-yard touchdown pass as the Cowboys tight end beat Dick Anderson. The Dolphins blitzed on the play, but he looks off the safety. He throws the ball to Ditka. You get the touchdown. It gives Dallas a 24-3 lead with 11:42 to play, and it completely tolled the bell of finality for Miami, which just in this game never got on track. They looked like they were in over their heads because, let's face it, they were. Now, Dallas could have made it worse, except Calvin Hill, who was used to spot duty and usually performed well in spot duty, fumbled as he dove for the goal line for the 1 after Dallas had driven 59 or 79 yards. And it could have started worse for Miami, too, because the game started and it was kind of forbidding because on the Dolphins' second possession of the game, fullback Larry Zonka, who hadn't fumbled all year, fumbled, and Howley, of course, recovered at the Dallas 48. Now, when you go to the MVP, to me it should be Dwayne Thomas or Chuck Howley. Shouldn't have been anybody else to even be in question to be the MVP of this game. And the other thing that really stands out to me is the way it seems like today most Super Bowls are competitive. They're good football games. Back in the day, though, if you remember, Super Bowl I was a blowout. Super Bowl II was a blowout. Super Bowl III, even though it was 16-7, was not a very tightly played game. It was 16-0 until Unitas came into the game and drove down for the touchdown with 5 or 6 minutes left. Excuse me. I've been sick for a while, but in Super Bowl IV, you had another blowout. Super Bowl V was a close game. 6 was a blowout. Then after that, the Dolphins went on to win 7 and 8, which were blowouts. And really, not a lot of competitive Super Bowls in the first 30 years of the Super Bowl. Since then, we've been blessed with a lot better games. And we'll look forward to another one this year. But right now, since Dallas Cowboy fans can't look forward to winning one this year, we'll give them today, January the 16th, 1972, when the Dallas Cowboys won their first Super Bowl over the Miami Dolphins, 24-3. Remember, you can hear On This Day every day on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. Follow us at Grueling Truth on Twitter. So for now, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to the Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.